This lizard is Viserys. He was abandoned by his parents the day he hatched because he couldn't fly or breathe fire. So, he begged us for one thing, to make him the strongest dragon in Westeros. Using real-world science, we're going to give him the powers of 5 legendary dragons from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. But later in the video, we discovered the dark truth, the real reason he was abandoned, and why it's already too late. Caraxes was called the Bloodworm, and he was a master at aerial combat. The secret was his serpentine body shape. Here's how we replicate this in Viserys. Body shape is determined by Hox genes, the blueprint that tells your body exactly where everything goes before you're even born. In Snakes, evolution rewrote those genes to produce hundreds of vertebrae instead of the handful a normal lizard has. In the early 1990s, scientists replicated this in mice. They altered their Hox gene, and the mice grew extra segments in their spine, just like snakes. So, we rewrite Viserys' Hox genes. His neck stretches, and his body turns serpentine. Hox genes also control where limbs grow and what they become. In birds, evolution used those same Hox genes to reshape their front legs into wings. Therefore, we make that same change in Viserys. Now, he has wings like a dragon. But there is a trade-off. A longer neck shifts his center of mass forward. This causes him to stumble on land constantly. Right now, he looks ridiculous, but none of this matters if one sword ends him. That's where malaise comes in. Malaise was called the Red Queen. At Rook's Rest, she was ambushed by 2 dragons at the same time, Sunfire and Vagar, but she nearly won. The reason was her armor. Crocodiles have one of the strongest defenses in nature, but it's not because of their scales, it's because of bones that grow directly inside their skin, called osteoderms. They act as natural plate armor. But bone alone shatters when hit at the right angle. The mantis shrimp solved this. Its front club can punch with the force of a bullet, thousands of times without cracking. This is because its fibers are arranged in a rotating helix. Scientists call it a Boolean structure. Think of it like a corkscrew. Instead of force driving straight through, it spirals outward and spreads. Therefore, we grow osteoderms in Viserys' skin and rebuild his collagen into that same spiral pattern. This gives him armor that can deflect blades. However, he becomes heavier and his stumbling gets worse. During the procedure, we notice something strange. Viserys' bones don't look like a lizard's at all, but more like a bird's, because they're hollow and connected in a network. We'll get to this mystery later. He's now armored, but his senses are still that of a lizard. Vermithor was the Bronze Fury, and his breath was so hot it could melt steel. But what made him lethal was his perception. Pit vipers can hunt in complete darkness and still strike with extreme accuracy. This is because they have pit organs, which are clusters of cells that can detect the heat every living being constantly radiates. In their eyes, a mouse glows in the dark. So, we engineer pit organs around Viserys' eye sockets. But we don't stop there. We also modify his Jacobson's organ to be the same as snakes. This allows him to collect tiny chemical traces from the air more efficiently. Now, he can track enemies by both their heat and chemical trail. However, the world becomes overwhelming. Every living being glows, and he starts flinching at falling leaves. His loneliness just got worse. If you're wondering about Viserys' hollow bones, this mystery is related to the next few dragons, and it's the most important thing in this entire video, because it reveals the real reason he was abandoned. Balerion, the Black Dread, was the largest dragon ever recorded in Westeros. He was so massive, his shadow could engulf entire towns. To make Viserys that size, we need to remove his growth ceiling. Every animal has growth plates, soft zones in the bones where a new tissue forms. At some point, they fuse, and growth stops permanently. But Greenland sharks can grow their entire lives because their telomeres never run out. Telomeres are the protective caps on your DNA that shorten each time a cell divides, and an enzyme called telomerase rebuilds them, keeping growth plates open indefinitely. Therefore, we engineer Viserys' body to continuously produce telomerase. By the way, the shortening of telomeres is also the cause behind aging, so our modification also gives him the longer lifespan of a dragon. But there is a problem. Cells that never stop dividing cause cancer. To fix this, we copy an elephant's biology, giving him tumor suppressor genes to suppress cancer. He starts growing, becoming bigger and bigger. However, his size creates a new problem. Balerion weighed over 100 tons, wings at 220 feet, still can't lift something that heavy. According to physics, he cannot fly. Both this and Viserys' hollow bones will be explained in Chapter 6, because there is a scientific concept in the next dragon that you need to understand first. Drogon is the last known active dragon of the modern era, and every other dragon in this video was building towards him. Fire. The key to producing it is a process called dark fermentation. Certain bacteria, like Clostridium, break down organic matter and produce large amounts of pure hydrogen gas as a byproduct. So, we engineer a fermentation chamber into Viserys and flood it with these bacteria. But fuel needs a spark. When you strike a flint and steel together, you get a spark. This is because flint is made of silica. Therefore, we install two hardened mineral plates at the back of Viserys' throat, made of silica and iron respectively. When he snaps them together, they grind at a high speed, and that friction produces a spark, igniting the gas the moment it escapes. Viserys breathes fire for the first time, but the hydrogen is produced whether he uses it or not, and the pressure in his body constantly accumulates. The moment the system was activated, we finally understood what Viserys' hollow bones are, and it changes everything we thought we knew about dragons. Here's what we discovered. The hydrogen gas doesn't stay in Viserys' fermentation chamber, it spreads into his bones. And his hollow interconnected bones aren't there randomly, they're a delivery system. The moment hydrogen is produced, it fills every cavity in his skeleton simultaneously. And a body with hydrogen running through every bone generates a lift force, like a blimp, allowing massive dragons to fly. This is because hydrogen is 14 times lighter than air. Turns out, fire and flight were always part of the same system, they were never separate. However, the hydrogen-producing bacteria inside that chamber aren't something a dragon is born with. It's transferred from parent to child right after hatching. The same way human babies receive gut bacteria from their mother at birth. Miss that window and it never happens. But the transfer doesn't just carry bacteria, it also carries genetic instructions that trigger the development of every dragon trait, from wings to hollow bones, as the hatchling grows. So, the reason Viserys couldn't breathe fire at birth was because he never received it, but not because his parents left him. When we traced his origin, we found that they were killed by enemies before they could transfer it. He spent his whole life believing he wasn't enough, but his parents didn't abandon him. They never came back because they couldn't. Here's why it's already too late for Viserys. He has everything, the body, the armor, the senses, the size, the fire. But there's one final problem we can't solve. When animals are born, their brain has a short open window for bonding. For example, ducklings bond with the first moving thing they see after they hatch. After that, the window closes permanently because the brain's wiring hardens like concrete. In Westeros, dragons bond with one rider for life. This mechanism is why that happens. Viserys' window closed the day his parents didn't come back. Balerion carried Aegon across a continent. Drogon carried Daenerys through fire. But Viserys carries no one. He flies alone. For the first time, he is everything he was supposed to be. But there's no one watching.